Evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the Carson City Open Space Advisory Committee to order. It is Monday, February 25th, 2019. Could we have a roll call, please?
Chairperson Scott,
Here.
Vice Chair Welch, Member Evans, Member Hall, Member Everson, Member Masad, Member Michael, ex officio Member Filson. The quorum is present.
Okay, we do have Member Welch on the phone, I think. Alan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Great. Nice to have you with us. Hopefully you're in the hot tub or something. Okay. Thank you all for being here. It's nice to see some members of the community. Do we have any public comments at this time on items that are not part of our agenda? Yes, please come forward. Introduce yourself, and we're happy to have you join us.
Jared Whitaker. I'm the Open Space Maintenance Coordinator. Just wanted to formally introduce myself to the committee and just express how happy I am to be on board and be working with such great people.
Well, Jared, it's great to have you with us. Thank you for introducing yourself, and thanks for being here. We appreciate that. This is a committee that really is involved in and cares a lot about what's going on in open space, and so we appreciate everything we've heard about you so far and look forward to you being able to really pull together some of the areas where we've had some real needs. So thank you for being here, and we appreciate you being on board.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Alan, anything you had?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Mr.
All right.
Chair, I have one more thing.
Yes.
I'd like to add during public comment, because I don't have another place in this agenda item. I would like to acknowledge Michael Fagan publicly. He donated $10,000 to the Open Space Program following the acquisition of his 20 acres on Highway 50, and it was donated for the purpose of maintenance and management of open space properties.
Great. Thank you very much. Michael, as many of you know, and some of you may not, has been a very strong supporter of open space. We'll be talking a little bit about another one of the areas that he has funded in terms of the long-term management and monitoring of Horse Creek Ranch. We want to be sure and recognize Michael and thank him for his continuing interest and support in open space. Okay, anything else, Ann?
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. We have two sets of minutes, October 15th, 2018, our last regular meeting, and a joint meeting with Parks and Rec on October 22nd. So we'll take those one at a time. Do we have any comments or questions on the October 15th minutes? Donna?
I have one correction. See, it was on the reference to the next, to the joint meeting on page 9, number 5. It says the next meeting the joint meeting to take place October 22nd, 2016. We got new microphones.
That's true. That's before we started joint meetings. So that should be 2018. Anything else? Margie?
In the minutes, it said that I voted to approve the August 6th meeting minutes. I did not. I abstained because I was not at the August 6th meeting.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Any public comments? Okay, is there a motion for approval with the items as outlined for correction?
I move to approve the two sets of minutes with the corrections noted.
If we could, let's just do them one at a time. If we could, let's do the October 15th ones first, if you would.
I move to approve the October 15th meeting with the correction that Member Evans abstained on that approval. minutes approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Good. Alan votes aye. Okay, the second set of minutes, October 22nd, 2018. That is a meeting that I was not able to attend, so I will abstain from this, but do we have comments or corrections? Okay, do we have a motion for approval? Let's wake up, committee. We need to move along here.
To approve the August 22nd, no, October 22nd meeting minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have motion and a second. Any public comment? Committee comment? All in favor say aye,
Aye.
and I will abstain. Thank you. Okay, do we have any modifications to the agenda?
No modifications, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, meeting items for possible action to elect a chairperson and vice chairperson of the Open Space Advisory Committee for 2019. Ann?
Thank you. This is an annual item on your agenda. The term for chair and vice chair is just 1 year, and I would like to thank Mr. Scott and Mr. Welch for their service last year. And Mr. Chair, you can open the floor for nominations.
Okay, do we have any nominations for, let's take them one at a time, chairperson?
Can we nominate the same person?
I would like to nominate Bruce Scott for chair once again.
All right, we have a nomination. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Are there further nominations?
I'll nominate Alan for vice if he's still interested.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, I will second that motion. And subject to approval, let's go ahead and vote on those two as a unit since we have two motions on the floor. That, okay. All right. All in favor of the motions as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I'm sure Alan does too. Yes, Marcia?
Yes, thank you.
I just want to thank Bruce and Alan for being willing to continue to do this. I think we're really fortunate. We have two great people at the helm. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. That's enough of that. Ann, did you have anything?
I didn't, but Member Welch just said thank you as well. I don't know if you heard him.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is item 3B, presentation from the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California regarding proposed nominations for the naming of select open space properties. Ann?
Thank you. A little background on this item. Last year, February meeting last year, I brought two properties to this committee and suggested names so we could officially have a name on these properties that we can call them and identify them on a map and such. We did open the process up to the public to submit nominations as well. We did have two suggestions at that time, and one member of the public did provide one name for each of the properties, and in that case, it was the Horse Creek Ranch fee title and the Hutchinson fee title. Both properties are located up Kings Canyon Road. And the person who nominated them, if I can recall correctly, one name, I think was a Washoe name, but another was a Paiute name. So even upon those submittals, I did contact Daryl Cruz with the Washoe Tribe asked, would those be fine and relevant? The Paiute name, maybe not so much for our area, but through a very good, decent discussion that we had that evening, the committee asked to table further naming until we had a chance to talk with the Washoe tribe. So with the help of Member Hall, we contacted Daryl Cruz, and I think Lindsay was there as well. We met here in Carson City. We shared a map with Daryl Cruz. He works with the environmental department. I can be corrected in a minute on the appropriate department with the Washoe tribe. But we did share a map with Daryl. Some of our properties do have names. We did say we would like to invite you to provide names. You don't have to, but we'd like to invite you, and really only if it's appropriate. Don't feel that we're needing this from you, but it's just an invite. And so with that invite, Daryl Cruz did respond with 6 names. And we do have Dorothy and Melba here with the Washoe tribe that perhaps can provide more detail for you on this.
Thank you, Ann. Dorothy and Melba, do you mind coming up and talking to us just a little bit? There's a button on those when you go to talk, and it'll turn green at the base of the microphone. But if you have any background or any thoughts, we'd very much appreciate your inputs.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dorothy McLeod, and I just want to thank Jeremy and all of you for giving us the opportunity to submit and recommend names for these areas that were discussed with Daryl Cruz, who's our TIPO officer for the Washoe Tribe. Both Melba and I are members of the Washoe Tribe Cultural Resources Committee. And since Mr. Cruz couldn't be here tonight, he asked that we come and share our information with all of you. So Melba, being the expert with the Washoe words, she's going to share them with you. Thank you.
And the first one I'm going to talk about is the one off Highway 50 at Voltaire Canyon. And this is an old place that at one time was used for gathering medicinal plants, which still grow there. And so hence, the name that we came up with is Washoe, and it says Mutsuklewa, which just means medicine place. And that particular plant is abundant in that area. It's slowly going away, just like anything else does. Climate change seems to touch all of us. So the other one, I think that's the one we're talking about right now. Wasn't it the one on Voltaire Canyon? You can talk about all of them. Oh, okay. The other one is property ID 00709111, and that is off Meadowood, Levi Gulch. It's up near Timberline. It's in that kind of, I think the train used to run there at one time in the past. And so hence, we're just going to call it, because it was originally on a Washoe Trail that the train actually used, part of the Washoe Trail. And so hence we call that Gumalanga Trail. All that means was it was in honor of a very, how would you put him, zealous Washoe leader from the 1800s who actually went back to Washington to ask for land that we would, because at that time we were landless. And the other one is the one at it's right down there where they have the, it's not a meadow, what is it called? Wetlands. Anyway, the wetlands area, and that used to be, when we were out there, they were putting in that medical center. We were asked to come out there because they had found a body, or bones, and different things there. And that's where they used to have actual ceremonies at one time in the past, probably back mid-1800s. And so that's what we called it, was Washoe Day, which just means Washoe lands, or where Washoes lived. And then the last one is down by the river. And it's where, at one time, there used to be really a long, long, long time ago before everybody else was here, before I was here, certainly. It was lots of trees that were like cottonwoods, tons of it. I think there's some left, but not as much as there used to be. And so that just says Asha Ashku. And all that means is behind the cottonwoods. And those are our suggestions. Is there one more? Oh, no, that's the same one.
Is that the same one?
Because I had it folded. But basically speaking, it's just, you know, some things that we had names for. And so we actually researched a lot of it. And the Asha Ashku was something that was similar in the past. That one especially, and the Washo Date is over there. That one at the wetlands. Those were old names that actually were in the past. And the others we came up with because that's what was to us, you know, like the plant area. So it's something you can think about.
Daryl provided these two different ones.
Oh, he thought of different ones too?
Yeah,
We just have the original map that he gave us.
yeah. These two are different.
Yeah, there were a couple on our handout on
Oh,
the west
okay.
side of town.
West side of town, let me see.
The first one you had would be right above the first one.
Yeah, the one that's called Horse Creek.
Utsuklewe,
Yeah,
Danulewe?
yeah, that one we didn't have.
That one we
Horse
didn't.
Creek Ranch,
Yeah, Danulewe. That's for everybody. It's People's Place.
yeah, the People's Place.
And the Solnga Ridge means just the top of the mountain. And what else is on here? I think those are the last two.
Those were the only two.
I think
Yeah,
we've
that's two
covered
we missed.
all that we have.
Yeah. And recently, Daryl has been taking it forward and kind of putting names back where the old names that were. And so we're hoping you will consider it also. We're still here. We're not going anywhere. We may be small, but we're always laughing. We're still here.
We really appreciate your thoughts and your input.
Thank you for having us.
Please recognize we're the middle here. We will be making recommendations to the Board of
Right.
Supervisors.
Right.
But I think, and if we don't have it, the background and some of the information that Melba and Dorothy have provided us tonight will be very useful as we make our recommendations going forward.
I was thinking the same, because this meeting is recorded on the video. I was already thinking that I'll have to go back and take the notes.
Great.
Yeah, there aren't many of us who speak anymore, so basically I also teach it, and it's very hard to teach people that aren't ready to learn. It's a language that is probably going to die out in the next, 10 years, unless we really work at it. So that's kind of an
we
important
see
place.
in a lot of different areas, I think, the change in culture that
Oh, yeah.
the younger
yeah.
generation has, and unfortunately, it sort of migrates in a lot of different directions.
It sure does. Yeah, because even with our young people, a lot of them are all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So hence, and they're not speaking the language. They have forgotten that and left it behind. And so basically, my cousin and I are about the only youngest ones that speak fluent Washoe. So we're hoping somebody will learn.
Well,
My
thank
best
you
student is
for sharing
Bulgarian.
that with us. Do we have any
Thank you.
questions from the committee? Yes, Margie.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Number one, can you tell me anything about the location that you called, excuse my butchering, Tanulewe?
Oh, Danulewe?
Danulewe?
Yeah, that just means people's place.
Was it a place where they camped or?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my second question is actually of a concern. I don't want to offend you,
You won't.
if the people, if we do choose these names, which I think sound beautiful and lovely, what if they get mispronounced?
That's okay, as long as it's there.
Okay, all right. Just
Because not
wanted to double
everyone
check.
pronounces it correctly.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I've given some consideration to that because folks that don't speak Washoe are commonly going to mispronounce the names of your places. It would be a very easy thing on our signage to provide pronunciation guides,
Well,
so
what
that
I'm-
it can be sounded out phonetically.
Right. What we're doing right now is, of course, the tribe back in 1990 adopted the linguistic method because Dr. Jacobson was the teacher of linguistics at that time. And so you will see it written that way a lot, but you can't pronounce it unless you're a linguist. So underneath it, we're just sounding it out. So you will see it in threes. If we do anything like that, it'll be in English, the linguistics, and then the actual way of saying it. And that's one of the things, yeah, phonetically, just so people can
I
read
think
it.
that's a terrific way to do it.
Yeah, I think if we're going to recognize these names, we need to do it in a way that people can relate to. And
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's great. Jeremy, by the way, thank you so much for your efforts in helping to bring this forward. Are there any other comments or questions from the committee?
Just one question for Ann, actually. Ann, could you describe, you sent me the form that the parks put together for public comment for naming some of the parks, some of the park properties. Could you walk through that and, like what the time frame might be for that? How we present that in a public fashion so that people can get their hands on it and think about it?
Yes, thank you for that question. So the process from here is similar to how we started last time with seeking nominations. And so we will go forward and providing these to the public. Recently, what we did, the Parks Division had, I'm going to call it a fairly robust process because it really was more thorough than we've been able to accomplish in the past. But Dan Arp, our recreation manager, is here, and so he can even talk about that survey that was recently released to the public. That survey asked the public on their thoughts on 3 or 4 recommended names for the Schultz Ranch Park and the disc golf course. So it had 3 or 4 recommendations, and which of these are your favorite, and they could vote. And then there was another box, or do you have another suggestion? And so people could enter a suggestion as well as a justification. So similar to the application last time, what is your justification? And because it's a survey and it's all automated, it could easily be populated by percentage and the most popular. And then they recently took those results to the Parks Commission. And I already talked with Dan, so similar to the map that's in your packet, we can provide this to the public as well.
And there's a couple of parcels on here that I'm not sure of our ownership. At the very north end up by Lakeview, do we own all of that up there in the proposed
Yes, we do.
Gumalonga Trail?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
That was property transferred to us from the U.S. Forest Service in the first land spill.
Okay, and then the one down at the sand pit at Highway 50?
Correct. And pretty much they fell under our ownership because the lands bill said these properties shall remain as open space.
And that's outside the area that they're now trying to revegetate?
Yes,
Okay.
or on the edge. And back to Jeremy's question, timing-wise, working with Dan, we could probably get a survey up to the public in maybe another week or 2. Maybe he can talk about the timing of it last time, if it was open, I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and I can bring this back to the committee in April.
Great, thanks. I don't want to muddy the waters with anything, but do you guys feel that it would be appropriate to, in the survey that we would present to the public, to provide some information that Melba and Dorothy have provided here for these properties, just so, folks that might be looking at that property might say, oh, great. I mean, there's already some, there's some perspective that's already been provided for these particular properties. My point is that my preference would be that the Washoe would be given preference to these, so that if the public is provided this information, they might agree with me.
And maybe we can invite Dan up, if you don't mind, and maybe he can talk about the survey and what the options are about entering information. I think we can, but
I have just a quick question, but is this? I mean, I saw it on Facebook or the Facebook page for the.
Yes, I'm Dan Arp, Recreation Superintendent for Carson City Parks and Recreation. The survey that we did, it's through an online survey program, so it is all digital online. Although you can make cards with like QR codes or things like that you could pass out so that people could then have links to that so then they go home. So if you're out somewhere and they're not in a place where they could take a survey, you could give them a card with a link to it and they could go home and take it. But it was all done online.
Thank you, Dan.
And do we have to? Recommendations as to what is.
No, that's the way we did it with the part process is we were just seeking the community input so that you could have that information if it would steer you one direction if you're undecided. So we could say this was by far the most popular name from the public's point of view, but at that time the Parks and Rec Commission could have gone a completely different direction if they felt strongly about it to give that recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
Dan, Jeremy's comments regarding a little bit about the meaning of the proposed Washoe names, is that something that can be made a part of the informational solicitation or the information made available for people to react to or?
Absolutely. You can design a survey to have whatever information you want. The one we did the park naming, we provided a description of the parks, where they're located, what they formerly were. For example, the Shoals Ranch Park was where the old racetrack used to be. So we provided that information in case that had a bearing on names people preferred. So we can definitely include some history of the property, some names if we give the recommended names, but some names that they could vote on. You can, if you give the Washoe names as an alternate name, I mean, I think there's room in there. You can give a paragraph to explain what the meaning is. But you could design, I mean, I don't think there's really any format legally that we have to follow for the survey, so we can design it however we want as long as we're seeking the public's opinion.
Okay, I think that would be good because we've invited the Washoes to provide us significant cultural input, if you will, from their perspective. And I think it's really important that we make that clear because they've only identified a few of our open space areas that they felt that had the significance to attach a proposed name to. So I think it's important that we recognize that and make it clear that it has a meaning. It's not just we went around and tried to create, some Washoe names for things. These are areas of significance for particular reasons, and the other open space areas that we have don't carry that. So I'd hope we could, in an informative way, provide that information as part of the survey. Okay, any public comment, other inputs? Yes, Ron.
I've got a question. My name is Ron Moe, citizen of Carson City. And anyway, a little background, I'm working with the State Board on Geographic Names. Anyway, I've heard that some tribes don't like to use people's names. It might stir up their spirit. I mean, some tribes, not all, and not all people, and I think maybe things have changed. So anyway, would be okay with the Washoe tribe to use Gumalonga? Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Are there any other public comments or committee comments or questions? Okay, so this now becomes a part of the survey that we're going to go through in order to come back to this committee to make recommendations, final recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. Is that correct? Or to the joint committee, maybe, of Parks and Rec?
Because it's a naming of open space, the hope will be to bring this back to the April meeting of the Open Space Advisory Committee.
Okay, great. Did you ladies have anything else to add?
I just wanted to say thank you for having us here, and for Ann, if you need to help on, pronunciation, et cetera, feel free to call me. I'm there all the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate
Thank you
your
for
time.
having
and
us.
We appreciate the cultural input. Some of us are lacking in that. Okay, next item for discussion only. Presentation from the Carson City Recreation Division regarding events at Silver Saddle Ranch and other properties managed by the Open Space Division. Dan Arp. You pronounce it Arp?
I do.
Okay.
So thank you. So for the record, Dan Arp, Recreation Superintendent for Carson City Parks, Recreation, Open Space. So as everyone's familiar with the Recreation Division, we're tasked with providing activities and programs for the community, and not just sports, but one of the goals that we set 2 years ago was to start offering community special events, which we weren't doing as a department prior to a couple years ago. There's lots of special events in Carson City, but nothing that we were offering. And our events aren't geared for necessarily bringing in tourists or anything like that. It's really just for quality of life for the community members that live and reside in Carson City. Generally speaking, in relation to like holidays and things like that, providing activities and events. And so in the past 2 years, we've done events such as, the Bonanza here in the community center for trick-or-treating for kids, the community garage sale. We do an underwater egg hunt at the aquatic facility. So those kinds of events. We weren't offering anything in relation to the holidays between Thanksgiving and Christmas and at the end of the year. And so as a team, the Recreation Division, we're kind of discussing different activities or events that we thought would be really fun and beneficial for the community. And we're brainstorming, and we just really like the Silver Saddle Ranch property. It's really kind of a great asset to the community and unique as far as properties that a city has. And we were thinking about ways we could do some holiday activities out there. That would be really fun. And so we got together with the Friends of Silver Saddle Ranch to start brainstorming a little bit because they do their holiday open house out there around the same time. And so we came up with some ideas, and mostly these are still very much in the brainstorming phase, but we're starting to formalize things a little bit more as, even though it's February, December will come upon us quite quickly in the planning world. So I think the idea of this is just to, keep you in the loop of some of the things we're discussing. And then obviously if you have any ideas or things you'd like to see, or if you'd like to volunteer your services, we're always open for that as well. But what we're more or less looking at, the first event, we're calling it Homestead Holidays. So we wanted to do it out at Silver Saddle Ranch. We're looking at doing a 3-night festival. It's going to be like a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. The second weekend in December is what we're looking at, because we don't want to compete with the downtown tree lighting. So it's the weekend after that. And it'll be in the evenings when it's dark, so you can enjoy lights. And basically what the primary goal is really just to get a lot of lights out there, because we think it looked really cool along all the old fences and the buildings and everything like that. And generally speaking, people around the holidays just like going to places and looking at lights. If we had nothing else, that would probably be enough, but we obviously don't want to stop there. And I think it would bring a lot of attention to Silver Saddle Ranch when there's a lot of people in this community who are still not aware of it and where it is. So, and obviously working with the Friends of Silver Saddle Ranch, they've been doing their open house there for the past, well, actually, I don't know how many years, but, you know, they get Santa and carriage rides. And so they would continue to offer those services. And then we would just look at some other, you know, events to add kind of just the ambiance that we were looking for. And we like that idea of the homestead just because of what Silver Saddle Ranch is. So we want all the decorations to be old looking, you know, no inflatables or anything like that, just kind of fit the old theme of something that was maybe in like the 1940s. But so, you know, and these are all just ideas. We don't have vendors lined up yet, but, you know, if we can find someone that does Dutch oven cooking or things like that, you know, to provide foods and soups and that kind of stuff, just more of that kind of old style theme, because generally speaking in my research, if you have a really strong theme for your festivals, it really helps create kind of that culture behind it. We've already been reaching out for donations for lights because we needed to take advantage of the previous holiday season and when everything was on sale. And so we've already been donated over 3,000 feet of lights, which sounds like a lot, but in a big space like that, it's really not that much. So we're definitely looking for a lot more, but it's definitely a good start. But we really do hope that we'll seek some sponsorships to get some additional funding. And we hope that by the time we get around to, you know, December, we'll have that place really lit up for the event and just try to make it really classy looking, not cheesy though, and just a really enjoyable place that people can come and just mostly walk around. There'll be a few festivities and things they can participate in, so arts and crafts and activities, maybe some music and things like that. I guess before we talk about any other events, we might as well see if there's any questions or anything about Homestead holidays specifically.
Yeah, I'd like to open it up for questions or comments from the committee, but also ask if Silver Saddle, who is well represented in the back of the room, if somebody from Silver Saddle could come up just in case we had questions for you guys. And while Nancy's coming up, any comments or questions from the committee? Yes, Margie.
I really love the idea of it. I know, having been to the Silver and Snowflakes Festival, probably 15 of the 19 years I've lived here, it sometimes has a poor showing because the weather is terrible. So I would hope that if you don't have a good showing in terrible weather the first year, you don't give up on it. Because I think it's from my perspective, it sounds like a lovely idea.
I would also recommend you think about having a petting zoo while you're there. With you know, with the homestead type thing, I think you would get the family, the kids, if you had donkeys and goats and all of that stuff. 4-H can probably provide you with a whole lot of animals.
We'll definitely keep that in mind.
Joanne?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, first off, the whole Bonanza community garage sale, the movies and the dive-in, what you guys have done the last 2 years for the community, I think has been great. I'm assuming it's well attended. I've been to several with my 10-year-old son and his friends, so I think that is really great. I like this whole homestead idea, homestead holidays. It's beautiful out there. I'm going to get to it. I really love this adventure triathlon suggestion. Even though I know there's some people concerned about it, I'm sure there's a way we can make it work. But we'll get to that, I guess.
Any other comments? Nancy, did you have anything to add from Foster's perspective?
Well, just that we're going to continue doing our daytime program, you know, having the wagon rides and all that kind of stuff. And we're there to have a couple of people there maybe at night to assist Dan with whatever we can. But we're primarily going to keep our daytime program for anybody that can't make it in the evenings.
Okay, so you guys are coordinated then,
Yes.
and will continue to be. Great.
Yes, that's the hope.
Yes, Donna.
You know, I would like to see too, out at Silver Saddle, more of the homestead type things, the old ranching type things. We don't have a antique tractors group here in Carson City, but I know Carson Valley does. You know, and the weaving, I don't know if there's a weaving group here in town, but some of the old ranching type stuff, demonstrations out there, I think would be really nice because it was an old ranch to demonstrate what the ranch was here in town. If you could incorporate some of those events into stuff over the year would be kind of nice, I think. It might bring people out there.
And that's absolutely the goal, is to try and keep it as true to our understanding of that idea anyway. It all just depends on what resources we can connect with over the course of the year and who we can get lined up and who's willing to commit to coming out into the cold and being out there. We did have that idea as well as far as reaching out to the Antique Tractor Club and seeing if they'd, and maybe some of those booths, or lack of a better word, but setting them up and maybe putting lights and decorating their tractors and things like that. We thought would be kind of a fun design aspect of it as well. But any ideas, any ways that we can, or if you have any connections or groups or clubs, organizations that offer services, that would be, we're definitely looking to try and get connected with kind of some of those groups that would offer those services.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the committee? Margie?
I have one, but I think I need to say that I am Margie Evans, private citizen, rather than Margie Evans, Open Space Advisory Committee member, because it's been my personal vision for Silver Saddle Ranch for a whole lot of years, is to make it for it to be an interpretive location that shows what ranching was like back at the turn of the 20th century and the early 1900s. And some of I keep thinking about bringing in artisans who could do blacksmithing or bake bread in those old stone ovens or dip candles or whatever all of the things were that those hardy homesteaders were busy doing every single minute of their lives. Anyway, just saying.
Thank you for your private comments. Any other comments from the committee? Any other public comments?
I have one that I would just make in reference to Donna's question about the domestic critters. I'm currently in conversation with the Cooperative Extension and the 4-H for some programs this spring, so we're just kind of starting to talk about that.
No? Who had something?
Melba.
Melba. Oh, I'm sorry. We won't allow you to speak from there, but come on forward. We want to hear what you have to say.
Have you been able to get a hold of the reenactment group? They do a lot of the butter churning and all of that kind of stuff. So that might be somebody who would fit into your ideas.
I would love to get some contact. We haven't really reached out to anybody yet. It was just over the holiday season.
Yeah.
We just kind of started brainstorming, coming up with the ideas, and we have our first meeting with my staff this next week to start making assignments and start actually trying to make things happen. So if I can, maybe we're done, I could get some contact information, and I'd be happy to reach out to anybody.
Yeah, well, I can get that for you. They're out of Dayton, most of them, but they're out of Carson City too.
Perfect.
So somewhere along the line, if you can get me, I'll leave you some information someplace.
Thank you very much, Melba. Jeremy?
So I think, is it Pioneer Days where we've got the, at Mills Park where we have, it seems like it's early summer where, it's a Pioneers Days type festival. What is it?
The rendezvous.
Thank you. I knew I had it wrong. I've been to it a couple of times, and I recall demonstrations with blacksmiths, and I I can't imagine it would be too much of a stretch, you know, for pottery or something like that. So, I mean, we already have, somehow this city is in contact with blacksmiths that come and do these demonstrations. So maybe we need to get back in, you know, in touch with these for the Silver Saddle Ranch.
Okay, is there any other public comment? Are we comfortable in informally encouraging Dan and the department to move forward, you know, with kind of an exciting concept here? And nice to see something that would be complementary to the Silver Saddle and its history, so. And frankly, maybe December will be soon, but it sure is nice to see planning 10 months ahead.
We need to.
Okay, anything else, Dan or Nancy?
So this is the other event. This is still really even more up in the air, but Ann thought it would be good to discuss it a little bit. But we are in the talks of doing a race out in that general area as well, what we call an adventure race. So it's basically an adventure triathlon. So instead of your traditional triathlon where it's run, swim, and cycle, it's you kayak, mountain bike, and trail run. And we thought that was a perfect location out there along the Carson River. So we're looking at if we do this and move forward with it, doing it in spring of 2020 because it's going to take quite a bit of planning. We have to do it in the spring when the river is high enough for kayakers to be able to enjoy. But basically, we're looking at even the order can be rearranged in any particular way depending on the course. It's not like a traditional triathlon where it has to be, you know, generally you usually swim first, things like that. It doesn't have to be that way. But we're looking, you know, from Carson River Park, kayaking down to Morgan Mill, utilizing the trails along Empire Ranch to Mexican Ditch back to Silver Saddle. And then the mountain biking is still the area that we're trying to figure out whether we can establish mountain bike trails on either Prison Hill or if we need to work with the BLM to do in the Pine Nuts and kind of come up with an agreement to do out there. Is still what we're trying to figure out, that element of the race. It's a little bit beyond our department's capabilities to organize something to this scale. So we've been reaching out to private organizations that run races and do this kind of thing in the Tahoe area. We've already had discussions with one who has expressed some interest, maybe partnering with us, but they would kind of provide the logistical expertise, and then we would be mostly the landowners and registration and marketing and that piece of the event. But there's still a lot of details that need to be worked out that we've been discussing with Anns as far as what's appropriate on the land, and also just making sure we have trails and access and parking and all the elements before we really move forward with it, just to make sure we can actually put the race together logistically and safely. And then if we can figure that out, then we're going to actually start moving forward with the actual planning it and getting it organized.
Okay, any comments or questions on that? I think, Dan, it's, you know, we do have, as you alluded to, some restrictions on our conservation easement. And obviously, we want to be the best, I guess, example ourselves of what we can and can't do out there. Because if it's such a great location and facility and venue that we have all kinds of requests for things that probably aren't totally feasible. So, you know, keeping close with that, I think it sounds exciting. And we do have the river, and that's a great way to take advantage of the river in a, you know, non-destructive way, so to speak. And it sounds interesting. So I guess on that one, you'll continue to look into it and.
Yeah, I mean, that one's going to be continuing to see if we can get the pieces to fall into place. And the biggest thing is if we can basically get the buy-in from, you know, a private organization to really help us to partner on that one, because I think we won't be able to run it without some help on that particular event.
Okay, any comments, committee?
Sure, I have one.
Okay.
I would imagine you've already thought of getting in touch with Muscle Powered. One person in particular who he's the Epic Rides organizer here in town is Kurt Mayer from Parks. He would be a great resource to reach out to. My thought is that the biggest hurdle, at least liability wise, would be the kayak portion of this. I would still be extremely excited about a biathlon if it was running and biking. I would definitely do something like that. But yeah, my suggestion would be if it was me starting off from maybe where you're starting off, I would get in touch with Kurt.
Thank you. And we have actually, not Kurt specifically, but we have started some discussions with Muscle Power as far as helping us establish the trails. One of the things that when we were talking to the business potential partner, he was talking about if you just make up trails for a race, if they don't already have some sort of a prestigious mountain bike trail, then they lose interest in it. So a lot of it's going to be this year if we can get Muscle Power to tell us what the trail is and really kind of establish it as a mountain bike trail and kind of build up some, I guess, kind of some publicity behind that trail to make, so it's more than just us putting a trail together. That's what's going to help the event succeed.
The North Loop at Prison Hill, I believe, is nearing completion. I wish there was somebody here that could correct me if I was wrong, but I know that one's very close, and so that would be a terrific. It's fairly technical, but it'd be a terrific addition to a triathlon that you're proposing.
Right, thank you. And obviously, we're working really closely with Greg, who's the trails coordinator, and helping us kind of establish the trails and make sure everything in the transition periods and everything is falling into place. So he's very much involved in this particular project.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the board of Muscle Powered, so I think, yes, the North Loop is very close, and with what's happening with the north end of Prison Hill, the Fifth Street, could probably connect in with the trail work that's going there. It you might be able to do a connect in there, and it might work out and make a nice, I don't think that would be a very technical, really, bike ride, the North Loop.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't ride it as a mountain bike ride.
I've dipped it several times.
But compared to Ash to Kings, I don't think that's fairly technical. But if you add in the coming down the north face, then it gets really technical. So, but yeah.
And just one of the things that when we were talking to the organization that runs the races, that they were really excited about this potential in this area is one, because we'd be doing it in May or early June when the river's at its peak. It's before all the races that typically happen up in the Tahoe area. So it's kind of something that they could add that's not competing with anything else going on. The other reason is that a lot of the races that do occur up at Tahoe are very either technical or competitive. And what he really liked about this idea is that we could design it to be a little bit more friendly towards people who just want to participate. And it's not overly technical. The distances that we're covering aren't super long. And so, obviously not necessarily anybody off the street can probably do all the elements of it, but more than you don't have to be this like super competitive triathlete, 50K type runner or anything like that to be able to compete. It's pretty basic things. And so it can attract to a larger audience. And he felt pretty comfortable that we'd be able to draw some people from out of town and kind of the region because of the timing and just the elements that we're including, especially if we can keep the river aspect, because that's what's unique about it, because there's not a whole lot of rivers in Nevada. And especially that section of river being relatively calm, because there's not really any rapids or anything in that 3 mile section. There's a current, but it's relatively flat. So relatively safe, although we would have to have lots of precautions and people out there for safety and liability reasons. But the elements are there to kind of make it a really great event. And so we definitely have the interest of some people because it would be something that's different for the area.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Any other public comment? Okay, any final comments from the committee? Sounds interesting. Keep us tuned. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Nancy. Okay, that was a discussion item. Next item is a possible action item to approve the annual monitoring report for the Horse Creek Ranch Conservation Easement for 2018. Lindsay.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, for the record, Lindsay Boyer, Senior Natural Resource Specialist for Carson City Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. So I just wanted to bring to you guys some of the updates regarding Horse Creek Ranch. So as part of the conservation easement, we do annual monitoring out there, some repeat photography. So in October of this year, I went out and completed that monitoring with the Carson City Weed Coalition coordinator, Marina Disbrow. She accompanied me for safety and also to look at some ongoing weed issues out there related to bull thistle. So from that monitoring event, everything's looking really good. Things are revegetating naturally out there. As you'll see in the report, there were some head cuts that we've been monitoring and kind of some cattle loafing areas and some other kind of areas around the creek that were damaged. And we are seeing natural revegetation out there, likely due to the amount of precip that we get. Not sure why else we've seen such success out there, but without doing a whole lot of intervention, things are coming back pretty well. And also related to that, the landowner, Michael Fagan, has had the opportunity to apply for and was awarded some funding through the NRCS EQIP funding grant. And so with that, there's a couple proposed items of work that he'll be doing in the next year all the way into 2021. There's kind of two phases of the work that they'll be doing out there. So the first phase that they're working on, planning and implementation, kind of last summer and into this summer, is doing some irrigation improvements. So the irrigation system out there is about 20 years old, so it's definitely aging and in disrepair. Some of the diversion boxes, culverts, kind of all the various aspects that make that irrigation system were falling apart. And so with NRCS, he was able to bring them out there, and they're actually doing a comprehensive irrigation plan for the whole meadow. So looking at how water moves and how to make that water more efficient as it moves through the system. And so with that, that's, like I said, improving those irrigation structures. And then in addition to that, they'll be applying for, have applied for the next round of funding, and that will be to identify a mitigation strategy for some of those head cuts specifically that we've seen out there on the creek. So with NRCS, they'll come up with a mitigation kind of repair plan and then do implementation of those repairs in 2021. So that's kind of just an overview of what's going on out there. Everything looks good. The landowner remains in compliance, so things are looking good.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm real happy to hear that we're moving from passive to active in some of those areas, and hopefully the weed issue will be included in that. I think we've been fortunate, and it's, naturally come along a ways, but it sure be nice to address some of those, those areas that are a little bit worse than others and some of the head cuts, and see if we could really bring that back to what it might have been 20 years ago. So I'm real glad to hear that Mr. Fagan has made that application and that EQIP money has been approved. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And related to the noxious weeds that are out there, we did do one volunteer event last year where we brought volunteers out to pull thistles. Donna was with us. And we actually had tried to plan a second event and had to cancel it because of the smoke conditions last year. But working with our weed coordinator and our volunteer coordinator, we hope to do a few more events this year. So.
I have a question about some of the condition on page 5 of the condition photos. I just was wondering, what is there a reason to be concerned that those, what I would call toe slumps, are seeming to get a little bit bigger? Is there anything to shore it up, or do we just let that happen?
That is a great question. It's hard to see from this picture particularly, but having been on the ground, some areas are getting better, and some areas are remaining what I would say the same, but I didn't identify any areas that are getting worse. But I think part of that second round of funding with NRCS looking at the head cuts, this is a really related feature that if they're not planning on looking at, I'll suggest that they look at specifically too.
Thank you, Lindsay. I wasn't sure about the terminology of head cut, and for me, a head cut is a very specific thing, and so I was looking at these and I'm going, I don't think those are the head cuts, but anyway, thank you for that.
Just wanted to say, we're going to need more than one bull thistle after this winter. This is going to be a rough spring. We're going to have a lot of bull thistle, I think, this spring. It's going to be a bad one. When are we going to be able to get out there?
Well, that's a great question, but I think that'll depend on snow and especially just the condition of the road. With all the water that road has seen, access may be an issue. And I know in 2017, that was a similar concern. And so we were planning on pushing the thistle dig at that time to August. And then I can't recall, I think just access remained an issue throughout the season and we were never able to get out there in 2017. But hopefully this year, whether it's late in the season or what have you, we can get out there. And we've also looked into the potential to bring larger groups like Boy Scouts or others out there. But of course, getting them out there is the challenge.
Thank you, Lindsay. Other comments or questions? Any public comment? I'm sorry.
I have just a couple questions on the report. Or on page 8, where you kind of talk about a diversity of pasture and wetland associated species and invasive grasses, and I've never been out here, so is this a relatively dry meadow or is it wetland meadow? And you also in there talk about Neal's Flume and 2 other springs and with water percolation, and I'm just wondering, how wet is this meadow?
Great. So the particular area where we do the pasture utilization monitoring is kind of at a higher point of the meadow. So that particular location is a little bit drier than what the whole meadow itself sees because there's a lot of drainage kind of internally. But you still see those kind of wetland obligate species like juncus. So there's enough water, to support that kind of vegetation. And we've actually, from what I've seen, a decrease in some of the invasive grasses up at that particular location. So it is wet at that spot where we do the monitoring. Like I said, it isn't as wet in some of the lower areas, but Donna can probably recall that our feet were getting wet last year. So the creek does kind of meander through the meadow and there are some soggy areas.
Well, then my next question would be then, with this EQIP grant that Mr. Fagan is obtaining to, I think you mentioned, replace specific culverts and irrigation boxes, just to be clear that they're not being over, I don't know what your plan is, but if they're working within wetlands, there may need to be some further evaluation of what's happening in the wetlands. And I don't know where you're planning on doing that or where the wetlands are, but that was just something to think about. And my other question was just the roads. I know you're looking we're looking at different types of head cutting and erosion in the meadow, but how are the roads that you drive in and out of? Are they being maintained or are they Do you see big rutting and erosion in those? Do they need any work?
So we have seen some issues with the roads, especially in 2017. There was a lot of damage to the road, and I think Michael Fagan did some work at that time to kind of repair. And then even this last year, he did some road repair too, and actually replaced a culvert that goes under the road that had filled up, and that was causing some of the issues. So as far as the roads are concerned, it is four-wheel drive to get back there, but access isn't as bad as it could be. And road maintenance is an ongoing, annual activity that the landowner is taking care of. And related back to your question about wetlands and kind of what we're taking a look at, I think having the NRCS as a part of that EQIP funding, and they're the ones that are helping Mr. Fagan write these two different reports, the irrigation kind of plan, as well as the mitigation plan for the head cuts. And so they're kind of the experts at dealing with these pastures and dealing with water on those pastures. So I'm confident that they'll be a big help, but we'll be working closely during that time too.
Anything else, Joanne? No. Okay.
Say something about the roads. When I first started going in there with Juan, I don't know how many years ago, we used to go up Kings Canyon and in there, and it was a much more direct route in there to get into the ranch, and we didn't have to go on so many roads into the ranch. But with Kings Canyon so in such bad shape, we're having to go in from Highway 50 and have to use a lot more roads on the ranch, which are causing more work on the roads in the ranch. So it's both roads are now being destroyed by erosion. I mean, Kings Canyon's so bad that we can't get up that way now.
Although that hopefully is going to change, right?
Well, that's a later report.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Lindsay? Any public comments? Okay, we have an action to consider on this particular report. Do we have a motion? Okay, Donna.
I gotta get up there so I can see it. Where is that motion?
First page halfway down.
It's the first page.
Just a little bit down from there, a little bit farther up.
You want it?
Right underneath the big black line.
Yeah. I move to approve the annual monitoring report for the Horse Creek Ranch Conservation Easement for 2018.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Are we getting, is Alan still there?
Alan, are you still with us?
Yes, I vote aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
Caught him napping.
okay. Next item for possible action to approve the annual report for calendar year 2018 regarding activities of the Open Space Division to be submitted to the Board of Supervisors. Lindsay.
Okay. So I know you guys have had the opportunity to look this over, so I won't read you every item that is in this report. But I would like the opportunity to highlight a few of our really big successes that we had this past year. So just to start off, I'd like to note that we brought on a few new employees this year. The first of which was Jared Whitaker, who you've had the opportunity to meet, and he's our open space maintenance coordinator and has done a phenomenal job taking care of open spaces in the 8 or so months that he's been with us. So we're really appreciative of him. We also last year brought on our first natural resource management intern. His name was Joey Kelso and came to us from North Carolina. He was a student, and so he spent the summer working on open space projects and was a big help to us. And then lastly, Miss Marina Disbrow came on as the Carson City Weed Coalition Coordinator, replacing Dan Anderson, who left last year, and she's done an excellent job as well. So we're really excited with all the help that we've had in the last year. Highlighting a few new grant opportunities that we've been awarded. We have several different grants through the Nevada Off-Highway Vehicle Commission. That's always a mouthful for me, but we're really excited to be working with them since it is a new funding source. You'll see in this table, we have 3 different grant opportunities. One of them is for the Prison Hill motorized area. So we have a phase 1 and a phase 2 of that funding. The initial phase, as you know, went towards planning, and then the phase 2 will go towards some implementation. And then also we have that same grant that was actually awarded to the Forest Service to do the planning and cultural clearances for the repair of Kings Canyon Road. So very excited to have those funding opportunities. Related to kind of all the help that we've had this year, we have several AmeriCorps volunteers who are working with us. And you can kind of read about some of the projects they've been involved in, but the AmeriCorps Vista, as well as Joey, our intern, have just been amazing help. We really appreciate and value the AmeriCorps program for what it brings to us in terms of helping us. So we're very appreciative of that. One event that I'd like to highlight that was new last year that was created with our community education coordinator, AmeriCorps Vista, was the Kids to Parks Day. So this was an event that was held out at Silver Saddle Ranch and featured a guided interpretive hike as well as a guided mountain bike ride. And there were several booths and vendors who came to speak with the kids about wildlife, pollinators, kind of a whole suite of different activities. And our education coordinator has created a whole junior ranger curriculum that kids can complete that helps them learn all the different things about open space. So that will be another event that we'll have this year. That'll be an annual event that we continue working and building towards. I think it's a great community event for the kids. Another event that we had was National Trails Day, and on this event, we were working on completing the Foothill Trail, which is up behind the Cancer Center here at the north end of town. So this was a really excellent project. We had multiple, probably 40 or so, 47 people came out and volunteered for that project. As you can see, we had partners from all over the place come out and help us out, but specifically we wanted to kind of note and thank Eagle Valley Children's Home since they donated an easement that helped make that trail possible. And lastly, another event that I wanted to highlight was the River Rally. So this is an international conference that was held up in the Tahoe area last spring. And working in coordination with the Carson Water Subconservancy District, we led a float trip tour of the Carson River, starting from Carson River Park and floating down to Morgan Mill. And so with that, we had open space tour guides that provided information about land acquisition, the open space program, floodplain protection, natural resources of the river. So this was a really neat opportunity to showcase the Carson River and the open space program to a national and even international audience. So before I move on to another section, does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to recognize the award that Ann received.
Yes, I agree, and excuse me for missing that. So Anne was awarded a very prestigious award at the Trail Summit, and this award was in recognition of her service for trails.
Congratulations, Ann. Okay, Lindsay, continue.
I just have one more
I'm
question.
sorry.
When we had our joint meeting, in October with the Parks and Rec, we were given a draft of the OHV management plan, phase one. Have we seen the final phase one report yet? It's a draft on the report.
Yeah, I can't recall if we made edits or not, so I will go back and take a look at that.
And then again, just for the timeline, when you read the draft report, they talk about phase one, being done this spring, phase two being done possibly throughout the summer, and construction starting possibly in the fall of 2019. And then when I just look here on this report, it talks about phase two being completed in 12 of 2020, and really doesn't discuss phase three at all. So I'm just kind of, because the draft actually pulls it out as possibly being done in a year or possibly 2 to 3 years. And I just was wondering if we were given any more information on that time frame, or if we've seen the final.
Yeah, so I will go back and see if we had any edits to that draft. I think we had a few. And it is on our website, so I will double check to see if that was the draft or the final. And when we worked with the National Off-Highway Vehicle Coalition Council, again, another mouthful, you can see on page 2, they were awarded on our behalf $200,000 from 2 different grant sources. We had actually applied for $400,000. So we are not able to complete all of phase 3 this year, maybe next year. But when we submitted these grants, both funding sources kind of took our applications and even revised it. So took some things out from phase 2, added some things in for phase 3. So right now it's a little bit of mix of everything that was in the management plan. But depending on the success this year of what we're now calling the new phase 2, which is the inventory of the trail, there will be some construction. We will this year put up boundary fence. That is one of the big items that the neighbors and even the public identified as a high priority item that was funded. We will be doing that this summer. And so depending on our success with phase 2, we will be prepared to apply for another grant this fall.
Well, that answered my questions, because I think that's what the initial report was saying. It's basically all grant. It's all based on when we get the grant money.
Yeah.
It could go really quick if we had gotten the 400,000. But so that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, anything else, Lindsay, on the annual report?
Yeah, there's a few more items that we'll note. So just a few really great trail projects that were completed in the last year that I think are special to note. So some trails up at Centennial Park, or what we're calling the Wild Horse Trail, was completed, and folks are already starting to use that. As you guys may know, the East Silver Saddle Ranch trailhead improvement project was completed, so we now have a fantastic trailhead out there. The Foothill Trail, which I've noted a little bit already, it's just a great trail that we were able to complete again with so many different partners. And then others like the Freeway Multi-Use Path, the Secret Trail, were both completed last year. So just lots of trail projects. We're thankful for Greg, who's really getting a lot of work done. And then lastly, the United Pathways Master Plan, UPMP, was updated too. So those were a few projects that were all completed last year. Moving on to a few more items, we acquired the Ham property, which was very exciting back in October. That was 206 acres that we added to our open space division in the Ash Canyon area. So we're really excited about that property and getting started working on it. Related to land management, the Weed Coalition was very busy this last year. We had a couple kind of novel projects that we've never done before. So one of them was a biocontrol project. So we're really trying to increase the integrated pest management strategy that we have, trying to use alternatives to chemical herbicide when we can. So this was a pilot project looking at a fungus that is used to combat Canada thistle in a couple riparian areas. So we'll be doing some monitoring this spring to see how effective that was. And then related to Eurasian water milfoil, which has now successfully invaded the entire Mexican ditch system. We've been working with all kinds of different folks, from researchers at UNR to some consultants working out of Tahoe to try to come up with a repair strategy for this plant. So far, all the traditional methods that are used on this plant are not going to be an option in this system related to things like sedimentation and others. But we have identified solarization using black plastic as a potential option, so we're going to be looking into that this summer. Other land management activities, as you guys know, there was a fire in 2018 that started in the rifle and pistol range and spread into Carson River Canyon. And so trying to do some revegetation of that burn. We've done a few things in-house to do some reseeding, a couple kind of small projects where staff can get because the topography out there is a little limiting. But as of just last week, we were awarded $10,000 to do some reseeding in that area as well. And just wanted to highlight a few more things. I mentioned our natural resource management intern, Joey Kelso. One of his main projects for the summer last year was to survey the Carson River for Russian olive and come up with a Russian olive management plan for us. And so he was able to complete that during his tenure with us. He actually surveyed the entire portion of Carson City owned and managed river property, and mapped all of the Russian olive infestation that's in that area, and then put together kind of a draft treatment recommendations and revegetation protocol for some of our open space. So I'm working on polishing that plan up, and that'll be available for you guys to review soon. And we'll be working with Jared to implement that tenets of that plan soon this year. And then lastly, one of the most, I think, exciting things that we did last year was the completion of our signage master plan. So working with Greg Bergeron, our trails coordinator, he was able to come up with this plan with lots of input from others and you guys. And we're already in the implementation phase of that plan. So we're really excited to get these signs out and start making our open space look more uniform. So with that, I'm done, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any comments or questions from the committee? Donna?
I mean, it looks great. This is beautiful. The only thing I have to say is the new bollards that you put down by the river, they're going around them. I did not know that. Yeah, I took my cat down before the first snowfall to take a walk. She's being trained to walk on a leash on hikes. And she loved the river, but I could see where they're driving right around the bollards. I don't know. Can we use IUDs?
Yeah, I was gonna say, stop trying to. Either way, it would work at some level.
One may take longer than the other.
We had to use the others earlier, way earlier. I don't know. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, Jared, come on up, thanks.
We were at the very first parking lot, the one I really wanted that parking lot removed. We were at the very first parking lot on Sierra Vista Lane. So I haven't been in the other parking lots, but I can see where they're just driving around them.
Yeah, Jared Whitaker, Open Space Maintenance Coordinator. That particular spot, I noticed the other day, it looks like there was a boulder there when we installed the bollards, and that boulder has been moved somehow. So that's on my list when conditions permit to go in there and add another bollard to secure that site.
Well, I don't know if you heard about how they I don't know, we still don't know how they did it. They removed the concrete monument that was clear in the river canyon before, so they can move anything, everything.
Yeah, and we'll just go back and put it back and put those barriers back in place, and two can play it that game.
Those game cameras are kind of handy too. There's some pretty sophisticated stuff out there. And it would be really nice to acquaint our justices of the peace with people that need rehab.
Perhaps their community service could be helping to spread the black plastic in Mexican ditch.
Not a fun job.
That's why I picked it.
And the new monument sign in the canyon, Jared installed.
Great. Is it protected by the gate?
It's not protected by the gate, but it has an 18-inch concrete base on it this time.
Great. Yeah, I think, we need to be tenacious and keep at it. At the same time, anything we can do to begin to identify violators is really going to be, I think, valuable, just to send the message and hopefully instill in people the value and the pride of what we have in open space. So thanks for your patience and tenacity.
Yeah, thank you. And I think as long as we try to just keep on top of it, that people will eventually get the message. So that's
And some of the other people are going to be helpful too, once they, I think, realize it's not just, once it's gone, it's 6 months or a year before something happens, so.
Yeah.
Okay, Margie?
I wanted to say that I am really, really thrilled and proud of the Open Space Division. You all, your small staff, and your mighty dedication have created quite the activities report. I'm so proud that we have that to submit to the Board of Supervisors. So thank you all for your hard work and your dedication.
Oh, can I second that?
Yeah, okay, absolutely. Yes, standing ovation to you all. So I have a question that I want to be on record with the Carson River Trail System. I noticed that phase 2, they're talking about a connection between the Mexican Ditch Trail and the Silver Saddle Ranch, which we have all agreed all along is badly needed, and one of the reasons we reached out on that SNPLMUP grant a few years back and got this started. What I would like to ask about is there's another trail that was considered in the initial grant process that would be closer to the river and would follow along. I was wondering if you can, at a future meeting, give us an update on where that is in process and when we will be seeing the potential alignments for that trail. Thank you.
I forgot, I was going to bring up, I think I mentioned this to you, Ann, one night when we were at a party.
Unfair.
I was sober. What's going on with the new work that I guess Anderson's daughter is doing with her little the Eagle Valley Farm thing and the expansion of that work there on the ranch down there, and how is that affecting the property?
I will have to get back to you on that. I just asked Lindsay as well. We do know that some of the products that they're raising down there, chickens, the cattle, of course, that they are selling at the farmers markets, which is great. It's keeping it local and to encourage local agriculture. But as for more details about the ranch operations and what they're doing, we actually have not been down there to investigate in any further or in any detail.
And if you can look into that, that's really not an agenda item, but it's obviously a matter of interest, so.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned it is because when I was up on the Prison Hill Loop Trail, when I looked down, it seems like there's a heck of a lot of vehicles there. You know, I didn't have my monocular with me, but it looked like a awful lot of vehicles on the property, and I don't know, since we do own the property, it could be affecting our property. And I think it's great that she's got an enterprise going there and there's something, it keeps, the land is being used for what it should be used for. I just don't want it to get out of hand.
Okay. Anything else, Lindsay, that you had on the report?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay. It's a very impressive report. It really looks nice. Do we have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the annual report for calendar year 2018 regarding activities on the Open Space Division to be submitted to the Board of Supervisors.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the report. I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any comments? Committee comments? Public comments? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay.
Alan, did you want to weigh in?
Aye. Aye as well. Thank you.
Okay. Item F for possible action. Recommend to the Board of Supervisors a work program outline and budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. Ann?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is probably one of the most important items in your agenda tonight because it is our roadmap for the next fiscal year. At the time of drafting this, however, I did not have the budget for next year. But I did note that for this report, I'll use last year's budget, but revenues are anticipated to be higher. And last week I did get those revenues and they are higher. I don't have that number, but a couple, like 100,000, 200,000 higher than what's here. So if I can kind of walk through the report, but feel free to stop me at any time. Most of our budget will stay the same, but what I try to do is highlight in red some of my recommendations, hopefully for the committee's approval. Two of those relate to positions. Our Trails Coordinator, currently, as you know, is Greg Berggren. We have had a part-time position for nearly 2 years. Amazing success. And knowing what we have ahead and seeing the Trails report, there's really a need for a full-time position, not just for open space, but really if we look more global to the city. The director, Jen Bunge, would like to provide 25% of a full-time position from either the quality of life parks account and or general fund to come up with 20%. So Greg can look at the city as a whole and look at those inner city paved pathways that people can travel from open space to open space or parks to park. So a bigger, more comprehensive position. The other full-time position that our department would like to propose is a third park ranger. Some of the justification behind that is simply more coverage. Currently we have 2 for the department. If one is out sick or on vacation or at a conference, that means we only have one person working maybe mornings or evenings. So we just really don't have sufficient coverage. Additionally, as we are taking the ownership and management of Prison Hill much more serious, we could use the park ranger to conduct patrols on the weekend. We have a new UTV. Thank you for approving that 6 months ago as an augmentation to our budget. We have bought it. So we have that in the trailer, and it's already been used. And so our third park ranger can help with education first at the south end of Prison Hill, that motorized users, dirt bikes, quads are required by law to have registration. But also with our improvements out there, we can also demonstrate to the public where their registration dollars are going. So I hope that we can convince those users why they need to register their vehicle.
And let me interrupt you there, because I think it's important for the committee to take a minute and discuss or concur or provide input with regard to these two positions. We have a trails coordinator now, which is a half-time position. Greg has done an outstanding job, and there's a real need. And I like the integration with the park side. I appreciate Jennifer's input that way. So we would be upgrading from a half position to 3/4 of a position, but the upgrade, there's a little bit more involved because you have benefits that weren't there before. But we have somebody, this is like trying somebody out for a couple of years and then deciding to hire them. I mean, I think it's I personally think it's a great idea. The second thing is the park ranger. We would be paying only a portion of it, so we will end up, with a little bit more, but I think a whole lot better coverage. And with what, Jared's got a lot better things to do than replace signs and monuments that get blasted out by people. And a higher level of park ranger observation, I think, is really valuable. But I'd like to get the committee's thoughts on those two positions, because those are important, and I think we need to be solid in our thoughts with regard to the recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Donna?
Actually, Muscle Powered the Board of Directors is going into retreat this coming Sunday to look at our strategic plan. And I think one of the things we are going to be looking at hard is going forwards more of encompassing all of Carson City and working hard to get more of the community out on pathways and trails, and encompassing more and making it even more of a bicycle and pedestrian friendly community, especially for lower income families. And I really see bringing the trails coordinator into parks and the pathways and the paved pathways and incorporating that so that it works well with the trails, and we don't have a disconnect between the paved pathways and the trails, and so that people can get from their homes to the open space without ever having to get into a car. And I think that'll work very well with where Muscle Powered is headed, and making this all one, a smooth transitional thing. And as far as the park ranger, the thing that came up with the bollards, the more rangers we have out there educating and being a presence, the better. I actually was in a meeting this morning, lasted almost 3 hours, with BLM, with Arthur, and Greg was there, and Jeff Potter. We were talking trails for 3 hours. That's a part-time position that Greg was, and he gave 3 hours to just this one meeting this morning. We were talking just trails for Centennial Park to Washoe to VC, and we're talking about the V&T. So, yeah, we need this. To me, it's a foregone conclusion.
Other comments from the committee?
Just dovetailing off what Donna said, I think that Jennifer's idea, I'm assuming it was her idea, of the 25% being paid by the city, and then the or by the parks, and then the remainder is paid by open space. I think that's an absolutely terrific value that we're gaining of Greg for this split. So I think I'm completely in support of. At first, I didn't quite get it, but now that it's been verbalized, I totally get it, and I just didn't quite understand where the 25-75, how it was represented in this table, but now I totally get it, and I think it's a great idea.
I agree on the trails coordinator for sure. Is Greg willing to go to full-time?
Well, and so we do have to remember that this isn't about Greg.
Yeah.
It is about the position, and he will need to apply.
Yes, okay, all right. Well, I would hate to lose his institutional memory because he has done an incredible amount of work for a part-time employee for the past 2 years. So I think, I agree with Donna and Jeremy. I think it's an incredible value, and I'm anxious for us to go quickly and move forward on it. I'm a little less excited about the park ranger. I surely get the fact that we need a third park ranger, but I still have a little bit of a concern about how much are we getting a full ranger on the two that we have, and how much will we get if there are three rangers over parks and open space?
Let me try to address part of that, because I have taken that up directly with Jennifer Budge. And Jennifer's working hard to make sure that not only we get our full measure, but also this is not just a ranger. This is somebody who's going to be out there interfacing with people, working on various aspects of operations, maintenance, and that sort of thing. It's not like a deputy sheriff. Okay. And so I understand your concern, and I have, as I say, I've discussed that with Jennifer, and she's working hard to make sure that what we see is commensurate with what we're paying.
Okay.
Or better. I told her better was good, too.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any other?
And I'll add to that, with Jared being here, he can vouch that at least over the last couple weeks, John Costello, the open space ranger who we pay for, and Parks, last summer, seasonally, they did hire out of their budget a part-time ranger. Both of them have been working with Jared on some of our needs. And so just as you were saying, yeah, a third park ranger and even Alan Biddle will be working with Jared as needed when he needs a couple extra hands on projects.
Jared, did you have something to answer, or were you just going to sit there?
I was just going to add to that, yeah, that they are very helpful. And having, like you said, they're not just someone that's out patrolling, they're there for maintenance and other assistance. So, yeah, it's a huge help.
Great. Thank you. Other comments or questions from the board, committee? Excuse me. All right, Ann, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to have that conversation, so please proceed.
Not at all, thank you. And I guess prior to wrapping that up, so even if approved tonight, it doesn't mean that it's approved. There is still another process. We have an internal finance committee that needs to approve full-time positions, and ultimately the board of supervisors as well. So it would just be our recommendation at this point. Turning to the next page, a couple changes, or not even necessarily changes, but professional services. At one time, we had a large amount in there that I'm adding that back to $250,000 for professional services. The hope potentially is the Community Development Department has submitted a funding request in their next fiscal year to update the city's master plan. The city's master plan, it dates to 2006. They do review it and somewhat update it every year, but not as a whole. There are a couple of supervisors that would like that to be updated as well. And we have been talking about updating our plan. If they get funded, this would be the time, because we can have a joint effort with them, hiring a consultant. Some of the other big projects, we would like to get back on track this year is the Silver Saddle Ranch Master Plan. So both of those could be costly. Contractual services, I would like to propose raising that dollar amount just a little bit more. Out at East Silver Saddle Ranch, we have two new toilets that we've not had to pay for in the past. So I think just increasing that amount just a little bit should cover us for the next fiscal year. Maintenance management, that is a large line item, $175,000, and all these numbers are approximate. I would like for you to keep that in mind. Because we have a lot of obligations, especially on our grants. We have $50,000 that we've committed towards SNPLMA. We have $35,000 on the Fifth Street Trailhead. We have a lot of commitments, so this is the line item that those will come out of when needed. Vehicle fuel will be increased just a little bit up to $7,000. We have another vehicle coming online, and as we bring more people, we will just be driving around town a little bit. And I guess the best part is in that machinery equipment line item, that is zero. I'm not asking for any new trucks this year. The next page just provides a little bit of a description of the professional services, fire suppression, the horse stewardship, which we cannot change, the inmate payroll, and the ISC general fund. Would you like to pause here, Mr. Chair, or do you want to talk about the work plan? Because this is kind of where some of those dollars are tied.
Okay, yes. One of the areas that I've been working with another one of our committee members, Jerry Masad, who's not able to be here tonight, is with regard to a particular area of interest that he has, which is the undeveloped area, I hate to call it open space, along Kuntz Lane, at Kuntz Lane, along Edmonds Drive. And it's the area that is not open space. If you go above Edmonds Drive to the east a ways, you run into our trailhead for the Prison Hill, and then you run into the Prison Hill property. This is the area that does not include, it's below the water tank, which is held by the city. But it's that open area that is undeveloped, and it has lots of, tracks and use and easements and other things. And there's been a great interest, and I see Robin Orloff in the audience. I think Robin and Jerry have talked a little bit about this, but I've spoken with Ann and I've spoken a little bit with Jennifer Budge about the potential value of having a little bit of preliminary planning for that area. It's BLM ground, but I think if the city had a plan that they were comfortable with, we might be able to get BLM to do something with that property. And so I guess Jennifer has indicated a willingness to have a little bit of staff time committed to trying to begin to develop some planning and public outreach efforts. Jerry has indicated a willingness to participate in that. I won't speak for Robin because she's here. And if there were anybody else on the committee that were interested, I'd be happy to be aware of that. But I would ask if we can consider that as a committee, as a value, that to me is an area begging for some kind of planning and execution. We will not be able, or I don't think we have any value or need for that as open space for the Open Space Committee because we have our trailhead and our area up above.
Isn't that piece of property that was in the plan to go up we were going to recommend BLM to put up for sale?
Yes, it's recommended to go back to BLM with the idea that we don't have a use for it. And I guess
wasn't that the piece that they were going to use for a fire?
Oh, there were all kinds of things. Years ago, there was a suggestion for a nonprofit organization office building, and then there was the fire building, and, those are not especially popular in that neighborhood. The goal would be to create a plan that hopefully would be acceptable to the neighbors so that we could, we can't tell the BLM what to do, but if we had a community developed plan, we might be able to have a lot of influence on that and potentially that area could, for example, be created into similar lots to what you see to the north and to the south, which would probably be of some benefit to the city from the standpoint of, just development and other tax benefits, utilities, and the ability to deal with the drainage issue that comes across Edmonds and, improve the access to, not particularly the water tank, although that would be a beneficiary, to our trailhead, which you really have to almost have four-wheel drive to get there sometimes. So that's kind of the concept, if the committee felt that that was an appropriate sort of informal step to try to do something there. And as I say, Jerry Masad, who's not here tonight, I told him I would discuss it and ask the committee for any inputs and any thoughts with regard to a little bit of informal effort to try to move that forward.
So Bruce, is the vision then to put together a planning document that would provide alternatives for what could be done to this property for restoration, or what other options might be available?
Yeah, I think the way I would see it, Jeremy, is it's an eyesore and a mess, and we don't want it, but we sure want to have some say into how it might go forward. And so I think with a public process, we could hopefully engage the neighbors and the neighborhood in developing either alternatives or a preferred alternative plan that might be a benefit to Carson and a benefit to the neighborhood at the same time. It's simply at this point, I think, the preliminary stages of getting out and listening to the neighbors and finding, trying to see if there's any kind of sense of what the neighborhood would find appropriate and useful there.
So we'd be discussing this property as open space, even though it's not open space, because it would be put before us to discuss informally as open space. And I would think that folks that show up to talk about this, community members, they're not going to like hardly any of the ideas. They're going to want it left alone.
And I think in the way I see it is before it ever comes to us, there's a bit of community involvement and some potential for gauging the folks out there and what they would like and helping to try to understand their thoughts and have them understand some of the concerns that we have now, which I think they probably understand at one level. But as I see it, the idea is not for this committee to do a plan. It's for this committee to kind of facilitate a listening discussion process that may result in the, going forward with what might be a more concrete plan. Does that make?
I think
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, along the kind of the lines of public input, I had a question that kind of touches on that, but it relates to the city's master plan as well as the Silver Saddle master plan. Are those efforts expected to also include, public input process?
Very thorough public input, yes.
So that what we're talking about could potentially just play into that overall effort. Is that right or not?
So the Silver Saddle Ranch master plan and some sort of effort for the west side of Prison Hill would be more detailed. They actually, it may not go hand in hand with the city's master plan because those are more detailed than what a city's master plan would be. So it can certainly happen at the same time. And they might fall into place, actually.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering, do we anticipate then professional services being used to help facilitate getting public input? Is that part of the concept?
It could be, yeah, especially for Prison Hill, because we were just talking about what is that first step? Is it just engaging with the neighbors, listening to neighbors, documenting? Whether it leads into some other document, yeah, it very well could have some costs out of our professional services line item. And I can't recall, East Silver Saddle, the conceptual designs that we had, design workshop help us with. I think those costs may be in the range of about 10 to 12,000 maybe. So if that's kind of what we're looking at, put some concepts on the map that we work with.
Yeah, I think, as I would see it, we would have kind of an informal public outreach sort of effort to really gauge the neighbors and just the concept of, should the city help move forward with some kind of a planning process there? And if it appears that there's an interest in that, then I think, we're not the landowner because the BLM is. And so it's more, as I see it, an informal process that gets out and really talks to the neighbors, because I think it's real easy to start planning on properties that are vacant and find out the neighbors don't really know what's going on, and we don't want to have that. It's really important that it be the neighbors coming up, as I see it. So, and Robin, I don't know if you had anything to add. I've identified you, but you don't have to speak if you don't want to. My understanding is that you and Jerry have had some conversation and would be willing to assist in the process of an informal kind of a outreach.
As Robin's walking up here, I just want to make sure I'm clear as well. So I think we're looking at the whole big area, from houses on the north to houses on the south to Edmonds Drive on the west to the fence line and water tanks to the east, right? That whole, it's 130 acres.
Right.
Okay, so only the front 30.
Water tank.
Right, only the front 30
Right.
along Edmonds is BLM. The rest of
Right.
it is city, under Parks and Public Works.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
But none of it is open space.
Correct, open space technically does not begin until
The
the fence
fence.
line and to the east,
So, but some of it belongs to the city,
100 acres,
so only a small part actually belongs to BLM.
correct.
Robin Orloff, concerned citizen, and I'd be happy to be part of a discussion. I have expressed my concerns to Jerry Masad, and he's been listening, and I think I'd be very happy to be part of further discussion. When this came up at prior meetings, I'm not sure that the stakeholders and the people in the neighborhood were totally aware, even though there are articles in the paper, what have you. Nor are they aware now of exactly how that area is going to change. And I would greatly appreciate facilitating some more communication about that. And the area and this is a discussion for a whole other meeting, so I just wanted to say I'd be happy to be part of it.
Thank you, Robin. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I do appreciate it, especially in Jerry's absence. Okay, any more discussion on that at this point? All right, go ahead. Thanks. Sorry for the second interruption.
Okay, so the work plan beginning on page 1 and continuing for a couple pages, many of these you have seen before. Some are just simply ongoing that we will be spending money on, like fuels reduction and weed control. So you will always see that on our work plan. Per recommendation last year, I also highlighted the items that we completed, so we can show some success. However, when I take this to the Board of Supervisors, I will clean that up because I may not necessarily need to see those items, but I thought that would be important for the committee. And then there's a few items, such as on page 1, under the Ambrose Carson River Natural Area, I identified if it's a new project for the first time. So you will see there are a few new items in here. I don't necessarily want to go over page by page, but this is an opportunity for the committee to provide input to staff, whether you don't want us to spend time on items, or are there items that we have missed, such as the Person Hill area that we just talked about?
Any inputs?
And-
To Ann on,
and we're going to have a busy year again.
yeah,
I have a comment.
go ahead.
I was, I read it over again, and I guess I'm not as concerned as I was, but I do want to go to look at that old Buzzy's Ranch property. And the portion that's new for 2019, you read down, in the last meeting, we agreed that they can do soil boring tests on the property to determine if water and good quality drinking water is available. I just wanted to make sure that we're all still in agreement that whatever they find, we still get to say whether or not a well will be put on that property. Are we in agreement on that?
Yeah, I think the discussion that we had at our last meeting was basically, we were okay with them moving forward with the test wells, which are essentially non-destructive and can be rehabilitated.
Right.
Depending on the results and depending on other considerations, if it looked like a well might be feasible, they would have to come back through open space. In the meantime, I've also suggested to the Public Works folks, if there is potential, that we have the opportunity as a committee to go out and look at those areas and understand what a proposal might be, how it might look, where it might occur. Vice Chairman Welch and I have had conversations and with regard to looking at possible locations, and he is informally following up with their hydrology people in order to try to look at the possibility for sites that would be least impactive and most easily facilitated. So I think, Margie, there's no decision and there's an active effort to try to balance things. And if it does prove that there may be a possibility for a well site, there's quite a bit more work that would need to be done.
That's just exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Okay, Ann?
I'm just waiting for questions and comments from the committee.
Amazing. Get it done. No, it's great. We have to really recognize how effective and efficient our staff is and how much they benefit from and take advantage of things like AmeriCorps volunteers and interns and that sort of thing. And we really appreciate that.
Very much.
And it's nice to get additions. Jared, it's great to have you with us. We appreciate what you are doing and what you can do, and we'll be hopefully have the opportunity to do as we go into a really busy summer. So, thank you. Anything else, Ann?
So just to kind of wrap up that item, a few of the items in the last part of your packet is a summary table of all of our open space acquisitions. We are just shy of 7,000 acres. I guess I could make that my goal for the year. Exceed 7,000.
Well, to get that last piece of.
That's right. That one piece that would push us over. But what's important about this table is how we've been able to leverage our funding. The voters passed the Quality of Life Initiative. The open space program was created. We received 40% of that. We have spent $11 million on open space acquisitions, but we've been able to leverage that and receive almost a $9 million extra. So that is really amazing. The second map just shows where the two latest acquisitions are. The one to the north, recent acquisition on October 5th, 206 acres, that was the Ham property and the newest acquisition on January 31st, that was from Michael Fagan. What I did not include in here, which I have in the past, is our open space opportunities map. So when I provide a recommended budget for land acquisitions, what are our goals? I am still trying to move forward on some acquisition for the Clear Creek property up on Highway 50. I am talking with the Old Woods Ranch family on a conservation easement with them. And a number of other, those are our two highest priorities, but a number of other properties still dot the landscape that have been identified throughout the past.
And the Fagan acquisition should be 2019.
Thank you.
A pretty impressive effort. And the beauty is we're building trails to join them.
Say one thing.
Donna.
And I still would like to see on our website information for each of these properties that shows how we utilize this money and how we used it to acquire more money. I want the public to understand. The public doesn't see this piece, how we took a little bit of money and used it to get more money. Because I keep hearing from people, what did you do with all that money? And they don't understand what that money has done for them. And I would like to see that on the website, and it's not there. And I've talked to Ann about this a couple of times, and we kind of come up with a little plan for her and I to go do some work on the website.
Keep me on task.
Okay, well, you know, I think the community as a whole really appreciates open space, but I think you're right, Donna. They don't really connect the dollars and what we're seeing. And a table like this puts it into a really good context because it shows how much leverage has been made, and it also shows how much money has gone into the open space program. And, you know, it's not that we don't get things for our money. We got a tremendous number of improvements and properties out there. So.
And in addition to the leveraging to buy for property acquisition, the leveraging that you have done through grants for work and maintenance and upkeep on our existing properties and bringing in AmeriCorps and volunteers, it's truly impressive. I remember my piddly little We Coalition position, I was pretty happy with a little bit of leveraging, but you guys are leveraging masters, ninjas.
Anything else, Ann, on the work program?
That is all, Mr. Chair.
Bruce?
Jeremy?
So back to Donna's interest in getting more of this information in an online format. To me, it seems like a challenge for the city to share resources because I think I know that the open space folks aren't necessarily GIS folks. And I know that powerhouse resides in Public Works with Matt Lawton. And I'm wondering what kind of a hurdle it would be to share resources to get somebody from, I'm not sure if, I believe Dan is now back working with Matt, and Dan is a GIS guy.
He's actually been promoted to a
That's-
different position.
Oh, that's excellent. Great. That's perfect news. Someone like Dan, I would see as a resource that could put together something like a web map where we could leverage the city's licensing that we already have, that we've already paid for, and to work with the folks that house the website and just integrate a web map where everything is clickable. You click on properties and a picture pops up and there's text and there's the history of that property all in a pop-up. If you're a GIS person, it's something that's very user-friendly. It's easy to do, and I've worked with Dan. I know he can do it. So that would be my suggestion is maybe not somebody like Matt, who is completely slammed with his asset management role, but someone in maybe a staff level position, a lower, technical position.
Thanks, Jeremy. Great idea, because today's generations really start in that interactive website kind of area, and that's a good way for us to help get them out, get them excited about what's out there, and get them out of the house and away from the computer.
Yeah, and every trail, should have a sub little link that shows how much each trail costs to build in both volunteer hours and grants, Because I don't think people understand. I've been out on the trail and I'll run across young people and get to talking to them, and especially if I see them throw trash down or cut trail and everything, and I'll ask them, I say, how do you think this trail got here? I don't know, and when I start to explain it to them, you can see them kind of go, oh, they don't know how it got there and what it took to get there. And I think it's important that they become educated. Then they care more.
Okay, any other comments? Public comments? Yes.
Hi, I'm Larry Marinell, member of Muscle Powered, and I have a feeling I don't really need to say this, but Greg Berggren does a really great job in that position that you want to make full-time. He's already been working full-time, so you need to pay him like time and a half. He's been an asset to the city, and I see him at all sorts of Muscle Powered meetings after hours, and he's representing the city while he's doing that. I know he's working many, many hours over a half-time position, and we love him, and I can tell you guys do too. So I'm for that part of the budget for sure.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the comments, and we need to be sure we let Greg know how much we do appreciate him, so thank you. Any other comments or questions? Robin
Orloff again. I just want to thank you all. I think the breadth and depth of your projects is just beyond impressive. And for staff to be doing all this and getting all of it done in the time you have, I think is really commendable. And I appreciate it as a user of your trails. And I appreciate natural resources, Lindsay telling me about flora and fauna. And Jared, just amazing what you've done since you've been here. I appreciate it. And of course, Greg and the advisory committee. I'm just so pleased that Carson City has this commitment to our open spaces, and we're continuing to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Robin. We appreciate your commitment. You've been an active participant for a long time. Okay, this is an action item. Do we have a motion?
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors a work plan and budget for fiscal year 2019-2020.
Second.
I second.
Okay, on the question, is there any public comment? All right, all in favor say aye. 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 Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Alan. Gotcha. Okay, next item, staff updates.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, Ann.
You already heard public comments, but really your open space team is the best team. Just the commitment to their job, the knowledge, the expertise, it's all top notch, really. We're proud.
Thank you.
A lot of love tonight.
We've heard that. No, it's, we're proud to be a part of it. And thank you for all your efforts. All right, get on 4A. Working group reports.
So the signage plan, I actually should delete from the list because the plan itself is done and we're in the implementation process. Cultural resources, I really do need to get back to. There's two elements to that. There is the architectural historian part of the survey, which should probably be done, or at least the report for us should be done probably in a month to submit to the State Historic Preservation Office. So that's one part of it. The other part are the architectural resources and the stewardship of Silver Saddle Ranch. So that is something I still need to work with Jeremy and work with the SHPO office, which I have a meeting this Friday with SHPO. Naming of open space properties. We had an update this evening on that, so that's moving forward. OHV working group, since completion of the plan last year, not too much work necessarily has been done yet. We were just working to submit the grants, which were awarded, and then we have field trips on March 11th in the afternoon for those who are interested in joining. I don't recall the time. I think it's in the afternoon, 2 o'clock? 1:30, 2 o'clock. And that it will be a very large group. It will include 19 members of the Nevada OHV Commission, from the National Off-Highway Vehicle Coalition Council, staff, and OSAC members if you're able to join us. So it will be a large group. A new one I would like to add. I need help. Just this year alone, I have received at least 6 requests for Silver Saddle Ranch. So already it's exponential compared to last year. Only a few hours ago was I able to complete a quick spreadsheet of all the activities that were somehow under our purview last year. And at Silver Saddle Ranch, we had 25 events. Half of those, however, though, were the Friends of Silver Saddle Ranch at their monthly meetings. So still we had 12 events of some sort, and they included interpretive programs as well, but a wedding, the Veterans Appreciation Day, Jazz and Beyond. So we are getting more requests out there. Why I need help is I don't necessarily think all of them are appropriate with the terms of the conservation easement. And maybe there is some gray area, and the conservation easement does say that if it's undetermined, then BLM can be asked for their review. So it's not like we have the final decision. And in some cases, I might take that road rather than be in violation of the conservation easement and the programmatic agreement. So there are some real harsh requirements and restrictions on us. And I guess what I'm looking for, and I think Bruce received it, even though I did get an email that bounced back to me, my own email said it was undeliverable. But there are other programs throughout the country, open space programs, that do have kind of guidelines and questionnaires for the public when they're wanting to reserve a facility. And because of the nature of Silver Saddle Ranch and the open space program, I would like assistance in developing some sort of questionnaire first for the public, what kind of event they're going to have. But then let's say there is an event that comes to us, like an equestrian event, for example. Equestrian is an acceptable activity out at Silver Saddle Ranch, but at what level? You know, we probably can't have 100 trailers out there. And so some sort of environmental checklist. I've talked with Lindsay and Nancy Santos. One of the comments that come up frequently are golden eagles and birds. I don't know when the nesting season is. I don't know when these sensitive times are of the year, but working with the friends, we can develop certain months of the year. Maybe some activities just can't happen. You know, if golden eagles nest at the south end of Prison Hill, we don't have any motorized events during those months. I don't know, but that's why I'm asking for help because I don't really have the time to do a lot of research, and I know the Friends of Silver Saddle are interested in helping. And so I would like to ask the committee for 1 or 2 members to work with them and come up with some suggestions.
Thanks, Ann. Do we have a
There's a lot
committee
of
member or
information.
2 who would be willing to assist in this process?
My plate is pretty full, but I do have a suggestion. Perhaps you've already thought of something like this, but if you had an evaluation matrix where a survey that was, if somebody wanted to have an event, they would be asked to go to a survey and fill this out, and those would be asking the questions that would relate and help answer the evaluation matrix of, what time of year do you want to have this event? And they say during a time of season when the golden eagles are nesting. Well, then that would be a sort of a, it'd be a check for you guys. There'd be a whole series of questions that you could ask that would help you answer the question of whether or not it would be appropriate or feasible. And then it essentially would come back to the applicant saying, no, you haven't reached the minimum criteria for us to, and so please contact us with any questions, or yes, your answers have met the minimum criteria for us to move forward to the next step. Just a thought. So it could be guided in sort of a survey initially, so you didn't have to field everything that comes in. You could guide folks to a survey initially to kind of winnow what the next steps might be.
I think, one of the problems is, particularly with Silver Saddle, we got a big area out there, lots of, irrigated area, trails, the Mexican ditch, and it's more fragile and more restricted with the conservation easement than a lot of people might realize. And I think Ann needs some guidelines and something that she can utilize to try to focus on the areas of Silver Saddle that are really appropriate and help people understand that the reason you can't have balloon races there is because they're specifically excluded in the conservation easement. We can't necessarily have carnivals, rock concerts. There's a number of things that in some ways, in some people's minds, you would think that's perfect place. And what we need to do, I think, is develop the framework so we can really help staff zero in on this, because it's going to get more extensive, not less extensive. Margie.
It seems to me that we need to somehow there needs to be guidelines so that Anne can follow them and not have to make arbitrary decisions on her own. And she says she needs help, but I think what I was willing to say that I would like to help with this subcommittee until you started describing all this computer stuff that I have no idea how that would go together. So
You are not going to be on a subcommittee. However, your name will be taken.
Okay. Well, how do you decide now? I mean, you have all these that were already approved for 2018. Were they all approved by the Friends of Silver Saddle Ranch initially? And
Yeah, so the table that I provided for 2018, everything on here falls within acceptable uses of Silver Saddle Ranch. So yes, they came to me for review and compatibility with the ranch and uses. So for example, the wedding, I think was that in August, she had wanted to use the facility at night. Well, our hours close at 5 o'clock. And if we want to keep Jared on, now we have to adjust his schedule, and he's focused on Silver Saddle. And that's not really, we don't have the personnel capacity to be adjusting our hours for events. It's a daytime use facility. The exceptions, and there were exceptions, is when it is a city-sponsored or a friends-sponsored event, because we have the keys, and that's why there's so many free events. So like the Family Freedom Festival / Veterans Appreciation, that was a city-sponsored event. The Jazz and Beyond is a city-sponsored event. Both of those went to about 6 or 7. The only ones that go past that are the night skies. You know, you're out there to look at the stars. So everything here did have my approval.
Anything else on that, Joanne?
No, but I think I understand where you're, I mean, a lot of these, I see why they're all acceptable, but we need to make some of those rules so that when we get a brand new project. Yeah,
And there are lots of requests.
Yes.
That's the thing.
and there are gonna be more. I get it.
And we almost just can't think of specific requests. It's more of what are the impacts? Like the pastures are not available for use, period.
Yeah, we
Because
have-
I have had multiple requests to use the pastures.
Yeah, we have
but
a
they're for
rancher out
grazing.
there trying to ranch, you
Exactly.
know? So,
You know, it seems like you are familiar enough with the property and you really understand the constraints. You understand the permitted uses. I think that anytime someone were to ask you a specific request, you'd be able to say, I mean, a yes or no, given what you know about the constraints. What I'm trying to get at is I think you, in your head, you actually know all the answers to the questions. The effort needs to be to make a list of all these questions, to form some sort of an evaluation so that when someone comes, you need to have some sort of a flow chart, some sort of a decision tree that allows you to quickly say, yes, this appears that it would meet, that we could accommodate this request, or no, we need more information, or flat out, no, that does not meet. Does that sound like a reasonable first step to help you, to help you in this process?
It does, and I guess for me, the vision of a working group is ultimately something that can be adopted from the Open Space Advisory Committee. So it's not seeming arbitrary or subjective, that I would like some sort of policy that's adopted.
yeah, I think the key is going to be to give Ann some tools that the committee has considered and, like you say, adopted. But it's coming from all directions, and a lot of them are offers that are hard to refuse, and we just have to have some guidelines that are clear, I think, to this committee and clear in our recommendations, so that Ann has very few things that aren't covered one way or another in that decision tree.
I'll add another comment to that. Yes, I do understand this fairly clearly, but there are some gray areas. And it's complex. You know, for the general public that's calling up to ask if they can use the facility, if I say, well, we do have restrictions out there. And as soon as I kind of go into that, it's like the Charlie Brown's teacher. Won't. It's too difficult for them to understand. So I need help to put it maybe in plain language on why it's a special place.
Okay. Margie, are you comfortable with assisting a little bit in the process?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would assist with it. What I need, though, I probably have the least understanding of the conservation easement and the rangeland areas. I mean, I would need to.
We can fix that.
Yeah, I would need to that, and I'm assuming a lot of the folks from the Friends of Silver Saddle Ranch also have a good knowledge of where we can and we can't do things right off the top of their head. So that could pare it down quite a bit to begin with. And then we have the areas that we know that are acceptable. But no, I think we could definitely develop a matrix or a questionnaire that can identify what might be some potential impacts that are not allowable with respect to the activities being proposed. And I could see, I could help to do that. I just don't have the background, and it would need that from you and discussions with the people at Silver Saddle Ranch.
I think that's a great addition, because that would be, if we can get, Joanne's kind of for me to explain it, we need your understanding. That's perfect. I like that.
Great. All right, well, thank you, Joanne. And Margie, you too.
I'm happy to help out with the technical aspect, if there's any kind of online something or other that you guys needed help with. Most of it is pretty self-explanatory, and I completely know that the vast majority of people in here could handle it, but if there's any questions or you just want help, I'm happy to help.
Thanks, Jeremy. Any public comment on that one? We've had some discussion. Oh. Hi, Nance.
Nancy Santos, President, Friends of Silver Saddle Ranch. And I have discussed this a little bit, but when I was working with Juan, we talked about this too. And I had prepared, it's like a checklist. You know, if you're familiar with NEPA, they have a little checklist, right? So I see it as something like that.
That's kind of where I'm starting to.
And I have it somewhere. I may have to reinvent it. I don't know for sure. But I see that as kind of the second step, not where Ann's making the decision right there, you know, but as the group that's deciding, you know, if she can't decide, then this is the other extreme, where you need to look at the resources and what the impacts might be and what the conservation easement says and all those kinds of things. If it's something that she doesn't feel comfortable making a decision on, instead of putting her in the driver's seat for some of that stuff, it is complicated.
Right.
So that's where I'm coming from, and I'm more than willing to help.
Well, you're expected to help. No, thank you. And, you know, the ideas of not just what makes sense under the conservation easement, but wildlife considerations.
Oh, yes.
And farming and ranching considerations and
Yeah.
other things. So
Exactly.
it's, I think we're moving in a good direction if we can get this group to, you know, work together and help Ann with this process, because there are a number of people coming out of the woodwork that are interested. It's a great resource, and we have to kind of manage people's expectations in the context of the resource and the requirements under the conservation easement.
Exactly, and I would ask somebody else on our board to participate, so we'd have two people as well.
Great, thank you. Robin, did you have a comment? Thanks, Nance.
Is that on? Yes. And I welcome the discussion, continued and ongoing discussion of what's allowed, what isn't. It's very complex, and I'm glad that we can all be supportive of one another. And I keep going back to that conservation easement and reading it over and over and over, and it's trying to figure out how to apply it. So I'm glad that we're all going to be on the same page. It's hard to kind of go off on another tangent, and I think the public doesn't know, or doesn't understand, so I guess we're going to be educating them as well. And is the Department of Wildlife, are they going to be involved with the Golden Eagle? Were they going to come in and do a survey, I think?
Yeah, so we've been talking with folks from state parks, as well as Department of Wildlife, to come out and assist with some surveys related to golden eagles, specifically on Prison Hill. So yeah,
So that
we're
will
working on
help
it.
to
Yeah.
bring in other resources like we've talked about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Is there any other public comment? Ann, you have a chance. Ann Knowles? No. Shaking her head no. Okay, anything else on working group reports, Ann?
That's all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any public comments? All right. Director's report. on non-substantive update regarding departmental projects, programs, and grants, legislative update, open meeting law training video, and Board of Supervisors action items. Jennifer Budge. Jennifer's not here tonight, so,
Jennifer's not here, but I have her updates.
all right.
Just a few updates. In your packet is a summary of the latest items from our department to the Board of Supervisors, just for your information. The federal lands bill is back in Congressman Amadei's office for final drafting. We do expect the draft back to Carson City within the next 30 days. We are paying, to the Nevada legislature, we're paying particular attention to Assembly Bill 84. 84 is the second version of what often we refer to as Question 1 funding. And so we use that funding to purchase a lot of open space properties. It's a second version. We're watching it closely because the first version was heavily leaned to the south. And Carson City would have been competing with 15 other counties for $10 million. And to give you an idea, out of $200 million. To give you an idea how much we were awarded the first time through Question 1, between acquisitions and trail projects and other projects. So Bailey Fishing Pond received some funding. Carson City alone received $8.7 million. So to share $10 million with 15 other counties, we would be fighting for crumbs. So we're watching that, working very closely. The difference with this bill, there's a lot more projects that are required to be in it. They're good projects, sage grouse habitat, landscape restoration after wildfire, but now that's just more people fighting for limited dollars. But we are watching that closely. You are welcome to testify as citizens, not necessarily as committee members. So I believe Jen will send out notices when those hearings are scheduled. If you have any questions, yes.
If I could say something about this AB 84. Also, Douglas County is adding an amendment to that. It's a $30 million bill for rural counties for parks and trails and culture.
And they're part of this discussion. We're in like a multi-county discussion.
County. And they've added an amendment to that bill for $1 million for the Virginia and Truckee Trail, for the rail trail that I've been working on for Carson, Douglas, and Story County. So $1 million strictly for that trail is as part of this bill. So definitely, we're in support of that.
And Jen is sort of looking or reviewing more than 200 other bills that have come through her inbox. And the DA's office or Patty will be sending a link to the open meeting law video. And I believe it should also be on the city's website.
Mr. Chair, Ben Johnson, Deputy District Attorney. In lieu of doing in-person trainings, the District Attorney's Office has produced an open meeting law primer video. I would recommend everyone to review it. It is online on the Carson City webpage if you go to the Boards and Commissions link. And I think it's about 15 to 20 minutes long, and so we'd ask that each of you to review that, and that goes over all the open meeting law requirements that board members are required to abide by. Our office, Dan Yu, the Assistant District Attorney, is also working on an ethics primer that will also go along with this. So I'm, of course, available for any questions. If anyone has any, you can either email them to me directly after watching the video or email them to Jen and she can get them to me if you have any questions about staying in compliance with open meeting law.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, we've had that problem periodically here in terms of your chairperson. Okay, anything else on working groups?
We were on the director's report.
We are on the director's report. Thank you, Ann. Anything more on the director's report?
That is all, thank you.
All right. Any public comment? Okay. Activities, projects, and grants located on open space properties within the Carson River area. Ann Bollinger.
I don't necessarily intend on covering this in detail, but on page 3, there are some of our events already for 2019 along the river and elsewhere. I just wanted all the events in one location, so they are all there for your review. Do you have any questions? Actually, what I will update you on, since Member Evans asked sort of this question, on page 2, the Carson River Trail System Phase 2, the SNPLMA grant, that the portion of the project for design and construction management did go out to bid last month. And, no, about 3 weeks ago, early February. Bids were due on last Friday, and we received 6 RFPs. And on the staff schedule, we are hopefully we'll get through those through next Monday with the anticipated schedule. And it's in, I think, Greg's report here to the Board of Supervisors by April 4th. So that's our initial start of the planning on those projects.
That's good. Glad to see that moving forward.
We're proud to see the interest.
Yeah, that's nice. What else, Ann?
I won't add anything, but if you have any questions, I will be pleased to answer those for you.
We've had, it's been a while between meetings, and there's a lot of activity. You guys have given us a lot of information here, and as pointed out earlier, it makes you realize how much is going on, so. Any other public comments? All right.
I have a comment.
Yes, Margie.
On the Carson River part here about the Russian mapping, Russian olive, we're not mapping Russians, we're mapping Russian olives.
There seems to be some collusion here.
Yeah. The removal management plan. I just wondered if you have considered a component in that plan that would include perhaps getting buffalo berry, maybe from the NDF nursery, so that you are getting something else in, you weren't leaving an open niche.
Lindsay Boyer, for the record, yes, you totally hit the nail on the head. Part of that plan does contain a revegetation component. We were looking at willows specifically, but I would love to get some buffalo berry established on the river as well, or a little bit more. We have a small pocket, but so yes, absolutely.
A former colleague of mine told me once that buffalo berry was the exact plant that filled the niche before Russian olive replaced it. So.
Okay. Anything else on trails projects managed by Open Space?
Carson River.
Carson River. All right. Anything more on the Carson River stuff? All right. Activities, projects, and grants throughout other managed areas.
Lindsay Boyer, for the record. So related to this report, most of the items in here are highlighted in the annual report, so a little bit of similarity there, but one of the items that isn't represented is Bee City USA. So this isn't necessarily an open space specific project, but it is something that I was a part of. So I wanted to include it here, and it does impact open space. So in October, the Board of Supervisors unanimously voted to designate Carson City as a Bee City USA. So the Bee City USA is a initiative of the Xerces Society, which is all about pollinator conservation. And so with this designation, it's really kind of a commitment to the cause of pollinator conservation on behalf of Carson City. And it's a very education-based program. So with this initiative, we've already hit the ground running doing some projects. The Chamber Leadership Group is developing a bee habitat. We're working with our AmeriCorps to develop some pollinator habitat and gardens elsewhere. And we'll be doing a lot of education this spring and into the next year related to bees, butterflies, and what residents and staff can do to promote pollinator conservation. So just related to that, you'll probably see a lot more pollinator-friendly activities coming out of open space and citywide.
That's great. You know, we have a lot of land that hopefully we could make available for those kinds of things. So, and also help maybe provide some habitat that's safer or free from some of the issues that they seem to be affected by. Okay, anything else on non-Carson River
Yes.
activities?
Page 2. The Michael Fagan property acquisition is closed after nearly 5 years. The mayor signed the papers on January 31st, 2019, at a total cost of $292,000, little more than we had expected, but the market's also coming up. An appraiser was hired. Working with Nevada Land Trust, we reviewed the comps. We couldn't argue with the comps, and I think maybe related to the cost, that's why Michael Fagan also donated $10,000 back to the Carson City. But finally.
You know, I think we have to recognize that the Board of Supervisors supported us through that whole process. And the fact that we paid 100% of our own money for that was, I think, a big step on their part to acknowledge and work with us to fill in that critical piece. So I think that's really appreciated. Okay, anything else on?
Members have any questions, comments?
All right, people are getting tired. Margie.
I was going to wait till after the meeting to bring this up, but I was just reading on a website last week about, it goes in conjunction with the Bee City and the pollinators thing. Nevada bugs and
Nevada bugs and butterflies, maybe?
That's it. That's it. They're actually, it looked like they're looking for a home, and I just wonder if one of our open spaces in Carson City might be able to help out with that.
We actually have a meeting that we're going to schedule with the leader of that group to talk about herbicide and integrated pest management. So we'll learn more.
Okay, any public comments on other managed areas? All right, trails.
This report comes from your part-time trails coordinator. You can see he's just as busy as the rest of us. And at the bottom of page 1 there, you can see the anticipated schedule for the Carson River Trail System. The reason this project's listed in 2 places, it's actually, all of us have a role in this project. And so Greg really drafted the RFP, working with Vern Cron, our park planner. Lindsay's role, she will be overseeing the cultural resource part of it. Then if we're looking at a trail on Buzzy's Ranch, I'm coordinating with Vidler and the well development. So this project is also pretty complex, and we all have different roles, and that's just kind of why you see it in multiple places. But Greg's really kind of overseeing the trail RFP process and the schedule there, with the help of Public Works as well.
Great, well, thank you. And be sure and tell Greg we are glad to have him hopefully have a night at home, so. Okay, anything else on trails, Ann?
Just a quick update then on page 2, the Fifth Street Trailhead, that has been another project the committee's inquired about. We received the quotes for the trailhead part, which includes a gravel base, concrete slab for 288 parking stalls, restroom, and a small picnic pavilion. The quotes came in over 100,000, so now we have to start over again and put it out to bid per the city's contracting process. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Sure, Don.
Just to clarify, this does it, the Carson River Trail System, this includes completing the Mexican ditch from Carson River Road to the ranch house without going through the road, right? It'll go along the Mexican ditch trail.
To be determined.
Oh,
When that project went out to bid with the map, and it is available online, and I think you may have seen the map before, we did emphasize these are conceptual alignments and field conditions may move the conceptual alignment. So where it crosses Carson River Road, I don't know. We have some ideas, but that's why we're hiring consultants, because they'll have to go through traffic studies, visual safety measures to cross the road, various things. So I don't know where that crossing, but yes, the intention is somehow to continue from the Mexican Ditch Trail on the south across the road to the Red House at Silver Saddle.
Okay, any public comments? All right. Anything before we go to members' announcements? All right, members, any announcements? Donna?
I am very proud to announce that we have an official name for the Virginia and Truckee Rail Trail. It is going to be the Historic Virginia and Truckee Trail. And of course, I already said on the AB 84, we have an amendment to that. If we goes through, we'll have $1 million to start that trail. Douglas County is really pushing for their portion of the trail to be the first built, which would actually be the easiest to build out. So we probably will be going forward with that first, and we'll be really pushing to get the bridge over the river to Grandma's house, actually to the distillery, which is real
Not
nice.
a bad destination.
No. We'll be moving forward with a nonprofit organization to support that trail, and the basic goal of the nonprofit, we'll be working on the vision and mission for that, but will be pretty much to support the trail and to maintain the trail and to eventually purchase the old depot as the hub for the trail. So.
Any announcements from you, Margie?
None from me.
Anybody else? No? Okay.
No, thank you. I'm still here.
Okay, good. Hang in there. All right, are there any public comments at this point? Seeing none, how about future agenda items?
For the first time, Mr. Chair, in your packet is a 2019 future agenda items tentative agenda items. The Parks and Recreation Commission has done this, submitted this for years. The director has asked that I do this also for the Open Space Advisory Committee, just so you can see what's on the horizon, and also if you would like to add anything also for future meetings.
I think that's real helpful, as well as reminding us when the meetings are.
And then we have a joint meeting in June. It is at our regular scheduled meeting date. So the Parks and Recreation Commission will be here. And so you can see 4 items that might be interest to both committees.
Great, thank you. Any comments on that one? All right, we have Muscle Power Annual Report that didn't get highlighted, but it's got some nice pictures in it. Congratulations to Muscle Power, thank you. All right,
Got one, Bruce.
Jeremy.
And do we need to add on the April 15th meeting, bringing back the open space naming item for April 15.
Yes, thank you. I will add that right now.
Okay. Last chance for committee comments or public comments. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. The meeting is adjourned.